Hello and welcome to Screen Fever. My name is Jackson Smith and I'm joined today by Adam Barnard, and today we're going to talk about some of our most anticipated movies of the coming year. It's going to be a really big year for movies, specifically a big year for Disney movies, but then again, what year isn't anymore? But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of movies coming out, even in the next couple of months, that I'm super jazzed for. I don't know about you, Adam, but...
Yeah, I guess I'm getting to the point in my life where I'm in total denial that, like, we're in 2019. Like, I remember growing up and thinking 2019 was so far away. So it's something where it's like the movies that are coming out now, even if it's like Star Wars Episode 9, like, I feel like just yesterday we were like, holy crap, they just announced a new Star Wars movie, or like they finally started shooting The Force Awakens. And now it's like, well, it's about to, the new trilogy is about to be over. That's how much time has gone by. So it's wild. I think we're kind of seeing the peak evolution of like blockbusters and cinematic universes with movies like Star Wars Episode 9 and Avengers Endgame, and it's going to be really interesting. I don't know where things are going to go. You and I have actually talked a bit about how the MCU is kind of reaching an apex, and we're not really sure what the next 2 or 3 years are going to look like, and so I just don't know what's going to happen in the cinematic landscape, honestly. Like, I thought comic books movies were going to burn out a while ago. So it's like, I'm kind of looking at this next year to see what really resonates with audiences. You know what I'm saying? Like whether those mid-budget movies keep getting produced, or whether we stay entirely with blockbusters, or a new fad comes up. Maybe we finally get some good video game movies and that becomes a thing. So I have a feeling it's going to be a real crucial or seminal year for theatrical releases, and it's going to set the tone moving into the next decade.
Yeah, it's both encouraging and discouraging to me that we can be in that place where we can say, oh, wow, it feels like yesterday that they announced Star Wars, or that Infinity War came out. Because I remember, when Infinity War came out last year, I was like, oh, I'm going to have to wait another year to see what happened. And 2019's already here, and it's just flown by. And I think I was so disappointed when they said oh, we're not going to get another Black Panther movie until 2021. And I'm like, oh, that'll be here before you know it. So that's a good thing. But then on the flip side of that is, oh crap, 2021 will be here before you know it.
Like, am I supposed to be married?
It's like time's
now?
moving a lot faster now.
Am I behind? Like, am I supposed to have kids or something?
Yeah, so basically, how this discussion is going to work is we've each got 5 movies that we've gone through and said, these are the ones we're the most excited for in the coming year, and we'll sort of pass it off each one. We'll say this is my number 5, this is my number 4, so on and so forth. And then once we've gotten to our number ones, we'll give some honorary mentions, ones that didn't quite make the list, but ones that we're still super excited to see,
or ones that I feel like I'm going to lose whatever credentials I have if I put on my list, but I'm still going to put in the
Yeah, there might be one on my list like that, but
So let's start with you, Jackson. What's your number 5?
So for me, it's actually I'm cheating a little bit since this one is not. It hasn't technically it's technically came out in 2018. People saw it in 2018, but it has not gotten its US distribution yet. So its US distribution, I think, is going to be either in March or maybe even February. And it's The Man Who Killed Don Quixote, which is the latest film from Terry Gilliam. This film has been, oh my gosh, I think something like 3 decades in the making. He's been trying to get this movie made forever. He's kept running into different walls. They even started making it with Johnny Depp, I think in the early 2000s, and then the production got shut down. The journey from page to screen for this movie has been epic in scope, probably more epic than the actual movie is going to be. I know some early reviews have come in. They haven't been all that positive, but I've always kind of been a Terry Gilliam apologist. I really love Brazil. I love Time Bandits. I love his early work, Monty Python and the Holy Grail, obviously. So I'm really interested to see what this is. And I mean, hey, it's got Adam Driver in it. Like, how bad can it be?
I think I was really happy with the cast the way it ended up. You know what I'm saying? Thinking of all the permutations that could have happened with whatever actor was hot in the past years that they might have tried to make this movie. I think it's great casting. And yeah, isn't there some kind of like well-known curse on this movie because of how goddamn difficult it's been to make it? Like it's one of those things where it's just that thorn in his flesh, but he still has to make. It's a real passion project.
It's I was actually doing a lot of research on this the other day because I was bored at work, and every one of Terry Gilliam's projects has had at least some level of difficulty. So it's like I look at it and I'm like, maybe it's not a curse, maybe it's just him. Like he's constantly butting heads with producers. I know this movie even since it premiered, I think at Cannes last year, it's had a lot of problems with securing distribution. One of the producers on it sued him. Yeah, so it's just even after it got made, it still had a lot of problems. But ostensibly we're finally going to be getting it in 2019. So that is definitely top of my one of the most anticipated movies for me. So what about you, Adam? What's your number 5?
Yeah, so for my number 5, it's going to be Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Ooh, good choice.
I'm not really the biggest Tarantino fan, so if you think I'm just putting it on the list because it's his next movie or because I feel like I'm obligated to as a film nerd.
You're being a good film student.
Yeah. No, I really am interested in him tackling that subject matter. Like, for example, like I think Tarantino is, or at least I enjoy Tarantino the most when he tackles a subject matter that I'm interested in. Well, like, for example,
yeah.
I'm very interested in World War II, and I think Inglourious Bastards, however fantastical and detached from reality, is one of my favorite World War II movies, and the way it deals with the culture and the subject matter and the characters. Like, I think it's one of my favorite movies and arguably one of the coolest movies of, the 2000s, in my opinion. But then there's stuff like with Jackie Brown or Pulp Fiction that I just don't really care for. And like I've kind of gotten to the point where I don't feel like I need to apologize about it anymore. It just doesn't click with me. But I think Tarantino has such a unique voice and control over his film and the cinematic elements that his hits for me are absolute home runs. And just looking at the cast, like Leo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt and Margot Robbie, and setting it in 1960s Hollywood, I'm like, okay, fuck, of course you got me. Like, I'm in.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how much of a Manson movie it's going to be, because I know when they announced it, it was teased as sort of like, oh, Tarantino's doing the Charles Manson movie. I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. But then it's like, Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio are the leads, but they're invented characters, so they're only tangentially related to that. So I'm like, well, then how much of that is going to be the plot?
Yeah.
I'm just very curious. I really don't know what it is, and I think that makes it interesting.
Yeah, well, I'll read the summary that's out. It says, a faded TV actor and his stunt double embark on an odyssey to make a name for themselves in the film industry during the helter-skelter reign of terror in 1969 Los Angeles. So I think it's going to be a little outside the whole Manson story arc. I think Hollywood is so defined by that element in that era that we kind of can, occasionally equate, oh, if it's that era, it's Manson movie. If Manson shows up in the movie, even as a cameo or a supporting role, it's a Manson movie. It's like whenever his name gets put into the mix, it seems to take all the attention. So I'm guessing that could be, the dynamic with the film. But again, like Quentin Tarantino's a wild card as a writer and a director, so I have no idea what he's going to do with it. And that's part of what's really exciting me about it.
So number 4 for me, this one I'm really not sure how this movie is going to turn out. It's Godzilla, King of Monsters. This is sort of the third film in the Legendary Studios Monsterverse, I think they're calling it, which is basically just a big excuse to get Godzilla and King Kong to fight.
Yeah.
Which, hey, I'm just so down for it. Like that's why they made King Kong so big in Kong Skull Island, is because he's gonna have to fight Godzilla, and Godzilla's super big. And I don't know, it's such a dumb idea, yet such a great idea. But up till now, the movies have been kind of hit and miss. I personally really liked Kong Skull Island. I thought that movie was really fun, really inventive. The first Godzilla movie was a bit of a disappointment. I thought the last 15 minutes of it were super cool, but there was a bunch of human characters which I didn't really give a crap about that they were spending a lot of time with, and then I don't know, it just kind of lacked momentum in the narrative department. But I put this on my list because they've released 2 trailers thus far, and it looks incredible. Even if the movie itself isn't a great movie, it just looks like it might be the best looking movie of 2019. And just the sheer spectacle of getting to see Godzilla, Mothra, Rodan, all these iconic monsters on the big screen done with 21st century special effects it's very enticing. I can color me enticed.
Yeah, watching that second trailer where they really went all in with showing, putting in the beauty shots into the trailer, these wide shots of like mass destruction or mass chaos or these very cinematic landscapes populated by these monsters. I kind of got the same feeling I got watching the Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom trailer in
Yeah.
that like I have no idea how good this movie is going to be, how good or bad this movie is going to be, but just for the imagery alone, like the level that the cinematography achieves mixing practical and visual effects elements, it's I want to see this. I'm excited about it for the image making alone. I believe the director's very young. Is it Mike Dougherty? I think he's like pretty
Yeah.
new.
He did I think he did Krampus a couple years ago, which I really liked. I really liked Krampus. So, but that was sort of a mid-budget movie. It was more expensive than say like a Blumhouse movie, but definitely not on the same scale as something like Godzilla. So yeah, he's never worked with a big budget before, but clearly it looks like he has. I mean, some of those shots are just really, really intentionally composed and really just phenomenally crafted. So
And that's the same with Jordan Vogt Roberts, who directed Kong Skull Island,
you're
because
right. Yeah.
he had only done like a sub $1 million budget indie film called The Kings of Summer. That was his only, which actually we reviewed on the podcast, the Home Experience podcast, if you want to go hear our thoughts on that movie. But yeah, I mean, it was something where for Jordan's second feature, it should not have looked anywhere as good as it did on the big screen. So I'm thinking kind of the MonsterVerse producers are picking out directors and cinematographers that they know can make these high quality and iconic imagery, and that's kind of one of the tenets of the franchise is painting those shots that look like they're a portrait. Yeah, so I'm all in for this one. Seriously, I've come around.
So Adam, what's your number 4?
Yeah, so my number 4 risks being a milquetoast option, but it's Avengers Endgame.
No, I that was almost on mine too. So I definitely super excited.
I think after Avengers Infinity War, everyone is on some level anticipating Avengers Endgame, because what they did in Infinity War was really unexpected. I mean, okay, so here's the funny thing. With Infinity War, it's not at all unexpected that Thanos succeeded, but we just never thought they would because they have such a successful cinematic universe. Like, yeah, killing off half your key superheroes, that's never going to happen. Psh, come on. So when it does,
Yeah.
it's shocking and emotionally resonant, and we've learned to love these characters over like 19 movies, and then half of them turn to dust. So for that reason alone, I'm curious to see if they're going to be able to land it. Like, you and I have already wondered if the plot of Infinity War isn't kind of bullshitting it, because we know a lot of these characters will be back, but we're still on the edge of our seat because it was a very emotional and dour movie, and like we want to see our heroes succeed again. You know what I'm saying? We want a happy ending for the kind of the last Avengers movie with a lot of these iconic heroes like Thor and Iron Man and Captain America that are probably going to go after this movie, and Thanos was a compelling villain. You want to see them kick him in the teeth and succeed at the end of the day. And there's been so much anticipation. So yeah, bring it on.
Yeah. I mean, I think I speak for a lot of people when I say at the end of Infinity War, I felt a little cheated because I was like, oh, you killed off Black Panther and Spider-Man, like really, like two of literally the most profitable characters in this whole franchise just bit the dust. I was like, oh, come on, you don't really expect me to be worried about this. And yet I'm worried. I don't know. I think Marvel is so good at storytelling, at getting you emotionally, not logically invested, but emotionally invested in the stakes and the characters, that I can look at a movie like Avengers Endgame and know the next movie coming out is another Spider-Man movie and still be worried about the outcome. I mean, that just speaks. I mean, no, that speaks to, how strong the Russo brothers are as directors, how strong the producing direction of Kevin Feige has been over the last decade of Marvel movies. And yeah, I mean, the hype is very real for that one. I definitely agree. Okay, so number 3 for me is another big franchise movie, but in a different kind of way. 3 for me is Shazam, which is going to be the next film in the DC Extended Universe, which, as most people know, has kind of had a rocky track record. Like they had Wonder Woman, which was a huge hit. They had Aquaman, which is a huge hit, I think.
Yeah,
than
it just
Wonder
passed.
Woman.
It just passed the global.
And I think it's going to pass even Batman versus Superman, which is a bit of a notorious failure, at least on a critical level. So they've sort of gone back and forth. They've always sort of struggled to keep up with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which they've tried to emulate in both the style of the movies they make and the kinds of movies they make. But Shazam feels like an interesting departure. This is not the most famous character from the comics, I guess. He's a young boy who turns into a superhero whenever he says the word Shazam, which is a funny concept. And judging by the trailers, it looks like a really funny movie.
Yeah.
Zachary Levi plays, I guess, the adult version of Shazam, and he just looks hysterical and impeccably cast in the role. In terms of a movie, it seems like such a fun bbasic concept that you really can't mess it up. It seems like a really classic superhero origin story, which I'm definitely all about. It's funny, I really haven't seen this one pop up in a lot of anticipated movie lists over the last couple of weeks, which might be because, we've sort of been gun shy with anticipating movies with a DCEU since so many of them have been really bad. But I'm really excited for it. I don't know if that's just me, but I'm kind of stoked to see what it is.
Yeah, it could be a little bit of a dark horse, like a movie that kind of looks generic and is going to get passed by a lot of pundits on, initial looks. And then when it comes out, it's a real hit with general audiences and, recaptures some of that fun. On a quick personal note, I grew up watching Chuck. Like that was one of my favorite shows when I was in middle school and high school. So Zachary Levi as an actor, I've always had my eye on him wherever he goes. And I'm so glad that he's got a big movie like this to show off his chops.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've seen Chuck at all, but he did a brilliant job of balancing some of the most sincere character moments with just outright, popcorn humor and action. And I was blown away by the trailer that they put out, I think at Comic-Con, because
it was a Comic-Con.
Yeah. I didn't really care about this movie. Like I was like, oh, Zachary Levi's in it. That's cool. And then when I saw the trailer, I'm like, oh shit, this is such a good vessel for him. This is going to be so good. I didn't go on my list because I didn't want to pack it too full with comic book movies, but yeah, I'm with you on this one, really, all the way.
He's a criminally underrated actor. He was on Marvelous Miss Maisel this last season. Really? For he showed up like halfway through the season just for kind of like a bit part. Something that I suspect might have been a bit part, but then wrote him into a more regular role just because he was so good and he had such great chemistry with everyone. So yeah, I think even just for him, it might be a really good movie.
Totally. All right, so for me, here's the point where I actually lose all credibility because my number 3 pick is Pokemon Detective Pikachu. Yeah, so this is really bizarre for me to pick. For one, because my parents didn't even let me be associated with anything with Pokemon. I don't know.
Yeah, you're not a Pokemon fan. I know this.
But it was something where it's like my parents limited my access intentionally because they didn't like something about it. I have no idea. Anyway, so I could care less about anything Pokemon. When Pokemon Go came around, I'm like, sure, okay, cool. Like have fun. Like I have no idea what the fuck is going on. But when I saw this trailer, I was so enthralled by the bizarre fusion of elements, knowing Ryan Reynolds now from Deadpool and his kind of signature juvenile humor that's now in a talking little Pokemon. And Justice Smith, I'm a big fan of. I've kind of been, he's been on my radar ever since Paper Towns, which came out 4 years ago now.
He's great in that movie, yeah.
Yeah, and it just was one of those things where it's like, holy crap, I think they're going to pull this off. Like it was just the aesthetic was great. The humor was great. Everything just felt on point. And it's a movie that like you would never think to put these kinds of elements together. I know, you even said to me, I've been waiting for a Pokemon movie for so long and this is what we get. Like I did not see that coming.
Yeah, I got mixed feelings about this one. I will say though, I'm interested to see what it is. I don't know if hype is the right word, but I am so curious to see what the first live action American Pokemon movie is going to be. Because yeah, like I've been waiting for this thing since, I mean, I've been waiting for something like this since I fell in love with Pokemon at age like what, 7, you know, like but it's just weird that this is what it is. I mean, on one level it kind of makes sense, like if you're going to do a big budget American Pokemon movie, you want to have Pikachu as the lead. You want to sort of treat it in a semi-ironic way so people who are only tangentially familiar with the franchise can get on board. Like everybody knows who Pikachu is. Like even if you've never played Pokemon before, like Pikachu is like you see a picture of Pikachu, you're like, "Oh, that's Pikachu. I know what he sounds like," you know. So the fact that they're centering it around Pikachu, it makes sense. It's just like if you'd have told me, Jackson, if you'd have told me in 2015, Jackson, hey, you're getting your live action Pokemon movie in 2019, and I'd have been like, what, really? Is it going to be about Darkrai? Is it like, you know, is Mewtwo going to be in it? You know, and you've been like, no, Ryan Reynolds plays Pikachu and it's a buddy cop comedy. I would have told you to go fuck yourself. I would have been like, no, that's just no way that's happening. But here we are, and it's happening. And I mean, who knows what it's going to be. Rob Letterman's directing it. I really don't think Rob Letterman's that good of a director. He did the Goosebumps movie, the first Goosebumps movie, which I wasn't a huge fan of. Like I think he used to do stuff for DreamWorks. I'm not sure, but yeah, I mean, Ryan Reynolds is hysterical even in bad movies. And yeah, what's his name from Paper Towns, whose
Justice
name I'm blanking
Smith,
on?
yeah.
Justice Smith is really funny too. I mean, even in the trailer. So it could be really good. It could be really interesting. We'll see. So now we're down to the wire. Number two for me is Us, which is the second film from Jordan Peele. His film Get Out from 2017. No, that was 2016. Oh my gosh, was that 2 years ago now?
No, it was 2017. It was 2017.
Oh, you're right. It was. Yeah, it was 2017. I'm totally losing track of time.
Right?
Anyway, you know, like totally bolt from the blue. Nobody expected him to be this horror director, and yet he comes right out of the gate with this instantly iconic horror masterpiece, quite frankly, which sort of broke the horror movie curse and got nominated for Best Picture and even won him an Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay. So obviously the hype and the anticipation for his second feature is very, very high, just by nature of it being Jordan Peele's second movie. But I really dug the trailer. I mean, now that we sort of know what it's about, I think that's definitely a fun concept for a movie. You know, it looks gorgeous. I think he got the cinematographer who did like Split and It Follows to shoot it, so it looks really cool. Lupita Nyong'o's in it, and I just love seeing Lupita Nyong'o in things. I think she's an incredible actress. Yeah, I'm super excited for this one.
That trailer scared the shit out of me, man. I mean,
that's seriously a good sign.
Yeah, no, I woke up like really, really early one morning when it was still dark out, and the first thing that I saw was like Jordan Peele's trailer. So I'm like, oh, sweet, like new Jordan Peele movie. Then I watch it and like I go and turn on every freaking light around like my immediate surroundings. I'm like, no, I'm not okay. That was terrifying. Like, you know, I mean,
freaky.
Even when I see modern, I don't like horror. I do get scared by horror easily, but like I've learned to become very numb and callous to horror trailers. You know what I'm saying? Like, if it's a slasher or haunted house or whatever, it's like, okay, like how much is a trailer going to get to me psychologically? This did. Like, for some reason, he is just a really, really, really skilled horror auteur. I really think that.
Yeah.
I think this movie's gonna solidify his name as that. And, you know, growing up with Key and Peele, like, I thought he would go into comedies. Like, I thought he would be the next great comedy director. And he's taken a much more interesting pathway, in my opinion, even though I don't gravitate towards horror in any spectrum. But I just really, I like following his career.
Yeah, no, 2019 is going to be a fascinating year for horror movies, because I think between this movie and the second It movie, the I guess part 2, the rest of the book for It, might collectively gross like $1.3 billion, and that's like for horror, for a genre that's kind of notorious for always existing under the cinematic rug. That's really interesting. I think what's been fascinating about the hype for this year, but just like the last several years in general, has been this sort of this wave of people going to see horror movies who don't see horror movies. I mean, like when It came out, when Get Out came out, like you were seeing a lot of people who just didn't care about horror movies or were scared too easily going to the theater in flocks to see these movies and loving them and talking about them the same way we talk about superhero movies. And yeah, we're seeing kind of the culmination of that in 2019, and it's going to be really exciting. I mean, hell, like M. Night Shyamalan's new movie Glass, it didn't make my list because also talk about another filmmaker who I've been taught to be gun shy with. But like that's probably going to be a huge hit too. You know, it's just a really exciting, interesting time for horror movies, and an exciting time for horror movies as blockbusters. So yeah, it'll be cool to see what comes out of those movies in 2019.
So for number 2, for me, I picked Triple Frontier, which is a movie by J.C. Chandor, who directed A Most Violent Year and Margin Call back in 2011. And this movie has a really star-studded cast with like Oscar Isaac, Ben Affleck, Charlie Hunnam. It's about a bunch of private contractors or ex-military guys who seem to have felt cheated by the system. So they plan this raid on a drug dealer who has something like $70 million worth of cash in some South American or Central American hideout, and they're going to rob it for themselves. You know, this is not a special ops on behalf of any intelligence service or any military, any conventional warfare. This is really just for private gain. And yeah, I watched the trailer, and yes, it's laden with testosterone, I know, almost to a comical level, but like I just thought it was so tonally on the bullseye. And Mark Bowl, who wrote Zero Dark 30 and The Hurt Locker, is penning the script with J.C. Chandor. Just from, you know, who's working behind the camera to the cast, to the concept, to just the visual presentation. I mean, this is a Netflix movie, which is probably worth mentioning, so it's not going to be in theaters, but I think it's going to be easier to find its audience on Netflix. It's not maybe not a movie that you want to pay $12 to go see during your weekend, but it's something you'll turn on if it's promoted properly, especially with male audiences, which these kinds of stories resonate well with. I truly trust J.C. Chandor. I think he's a director that's been criminally overlooked. I think A Most Violent Year was one of the best movies of 2014, and so for him to tackle war and moral ambiguity with private contractors, I get so jazzed for that.
Yeah, this is such a you movie, Adam. Like
I know, right?
I saw the trailer for that movie. I'm like, oh, Adam's gonna love that movie. I'm excited, even just for the cast. Like I think one of the first shots of the trailer is like they open a shipping container and you see like all the guys there, and it was just like this. Like I was like, oh my gosh, all of those guys in a movie. Like that's gonna be nuts. You know, I mean, like I love pretty much everything Oscar Isaac does.
Yeah, me too.
Charlie Hunnam, who I find to be a very underrated actor. Yeah, it's gonna be really interesting. I think, you know, J.C. Chandor has been kind of underrated in the sense that his movies haven't necessarily been very popular. They haven't been like big hits, you know, like All Is Lost, Margin Call, A Most Violent Year. Like if you operate in film circles, you've at least heard of these movies, if not seen them. And if you've seen them, you probably loved them. I know you're like the second person who's told me A Most Violent Year was like the best movie of that year.
Yeah.
I'm kicking myself for not having seen it yet, but I definitely will now. But yeah, sort of outside of that, he hasn't found a whole lot of mainstream success, which you don't need, but hopefully this will be the movie that sort of like really puts him on the map.
Yeah, and one other thing that's worth mentioning is there is plenty of B-list productions that deal with private contractors or espionage or war films. You know what I'm saying? Where it's like, yeah, let's throw together some stars and make a movie. I just know that Mark Bowl and J.C. Chandor in their body of work have such high level of artistic integrity. Like this is not a movie that for a paycheck. I cannot see any scenario where these two team up and they're like, yeah, let's just bullshit some movie, for Netflix and for $20 million and yeah, it'll be great. We'll make a paycheck. Like these guys really bring a lot of experience and precision to their craft. So I cannot see it being bad in any way, honestly.
All right, number one.
Yeah, here we go.
So my number one, and I again, it's kind of an obvious choice. It's an obvious choice, but I need to know what Star Wars Episode 9 is going to be. I just like, it might be just because I've loved the last two Star Wars. Well, love is a strong word. Force Awakens is a little mediocre, but I loved Last Jedi. I was very curious to see where the franchise was going to go after Last Jedi. I'm very curious to see how they're going to deal with Carrie Fisher's passing. There's been a lot of sort of talk in the media about how big her role is going to be. And I'm also just a huge Star Wars fan. So like the fact that I don't even know anything about this movie yet only makes me more excited
Yeah,
for it.
mystery box.
Yeah. And then J.J. Abrams is doing it. And you know what? Like, hey, I mean, I don't know. I've only really seen one J.J. Abrams movie that I actively disliked. Like, I do think he's a solid director, and I think, and I do think he'll probably end the franchise on a high note. Yeah, I'm such a big Star Wars fan, and this is the culmination of this new trilogy. So it's a very exciting thing for me, and I really can't honestly say that there's any other movie this year that I'm more excited for than whatever the new Star Wars movie is going to be. But the fact that it is the third in this trilogy, in the sequel trilogy that we didn't even anticipate was going to happen, is just I'm just so excited.
Yeah, I mean, it better be good because this is the third iteration of the story. Like there was an iteration with Colin Trevorrow, then Carrie Fisher died, so they had to scrap the old story and write a new script, and then they scrapped that script, and then they may even hire Jack Thorne, so maybe that's a fourth version that or a third version that he started work on, and then J.J. Abrams is the fourth iteration of the script and the story. Like at that point, if Disney and Kathy Kennedy and the story group can't get the end to the Skywalker story right after that many tries, then it would, come on. Like I think this movie, there's so much riding on this movie culturally and for the brand of Star Wars. Like whether we like it or not, or whatever your opinions on the movies are, Star Wars is a brand under siege right now. After Solo, that's a real wake-up call and a warning, and what are we going to do with our spin-off slates? Like this is the end of the Skywalker trilogy. It's not like we can do another trilogy and invite back all these old stars that everyone will line up for. You know what I'm saying? They've capitalized everything that they could have on nostalgia of the original trilogy, and this has to give a satisfying conclusion and then launch a new era of Star Wars. I know that JJ usually has a high threshold for quality. Even his bad work is still good because he's such a good character storyteller. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, at the very least, it'll be charismatic and have a lot of energy and be visually engaging and have a lot of passion and opera to it. I mean, I personally, without getting into too much detail, I've not enjoyed the direction of this sequel trilogy. I've enjoyed moments and parts, but did not like The Last Jedi, and I have real qualms with The Force Awakens. And I don't feel like it captured the magic or tone or mythology or even the essence of Star Wars, to be honest. So I'm skeptical, but instead of looking at it as, the end of a long story, I'm going to try to look at it as one movie and see if they can just make the best possible movie and the most thrilling resolution of these characters' storylines.
Yeah, what was so fascinating about Last Jedi, just to touch on that really quickly,
Sure.
specifically the end of that movie was, like taking, say, Empire, for example. Like you got to the end of that movie and it was like getting to the end of that movie was like getting to the end of Avengers Infinity War. Like at the end of Avengers Infinity War, we were so hyped for the next movie because we were like, we want this very specific thing to happen. We were like, oh no, you got to get Han Solo back. You got to defeat Darth Vader. You got to defeat the Empire. Like it was like that was the kind of anticipation riding on the next movie. Whereas I think the anticipation going into Star Wars Episode 9 because of Last Jedi is very different. Like now I'm at the space with the franchise where I have no idea what's going to happen. I can look at Avengers Endgame and be like, even if I don't know what's going to physically happen in that movie, I know what's going to quote unquote happen. There will be surprises, there will be unexpected things. Some people might die that I'm not expecting to die. Some people might live who I'm not expecting to live. But overall, like we see the loose direction that this is going. And I just don't see that with Episode 9, and that is so thrilling to me. Like just knowing that this franchise could go any number of directions and just the infinite amount of possibility with it is just very, very exciting and gratifying to me as a moviegoer. So that just sort of to refine my opinion on it, and I know that pissed a lot of people off with Last Jedi. Like they were like, oh well, the stakes aren't as high now. Like I feel like I don't really care where everybody else goes. And it's like, you know what, that's fine. Then don't go and see the next movie. But for me, like I got to the end of Last Jedi and it was like the universe had opened up. And I think for Star, and it was like for Star Wars to I think for Star Wars to continue going into the 21st century, you don't need a conclusion to a trilogy. You need to throw the door open, and you need to throw the door open to a world of possibility. And I think, regardless of how well Last Jedi did that, I think that was the point of Last Jedi. That was the purpose of that movie. And I think I can only hope, but I think that's where episode 9 is going to go. Is I think, like, for instance, we were talking, just as an example, like we were talking a couple months ago about this, and I was like, of course no one wanted to see a Han Solo movie, but I bet you if they did a Poe Dameron movie like 3 years from now, it'd make $1 billion. Like, everybody loves Poe Dameron.
Yeah,
So
no,
like,
I
it's
agree
like
with
it's about creating a longevity and a future for the franchise, and that comes with creating new characters, creating new stories, and pushing the series forward. But you're right, it's the end of the Skywalker lineage. So yeah, so it's going to be very interesting. It's going to be epic probably, and I'm so excited. So Adam, what's your number one?
Yeah, so my number one is actually going to be Jon Favreau's live action remake of The Lion King. What? Jesus, already?
No, you're right. It's the hype is real. The hype is very real.
Well, and here's part of the reason this is a weird choice for me is I didn't see The Lion King until high school, and the first time I saw it was in Spanish class when the teacher played The Lion King in Spanish, thinking we had all seen it, so we would like pick up on the Spanish word, the Spanish equivalent of the English words that we know by heart, and that was my first time seeing the movie, and I didn't really like it that much. I think I watched it again in English, and I didn't really care for it either. Like I say,
because you saw it the first time in Spanish.
quite possibly, but also like I was never a big fan of like those kinds of animated movies growing up, that kind of animation, that kind of story, and like I had a very unconventional childhood, and that just wasn't a part of it, so I don't have that indelible emotion, that real spiritual, youthful connection to this material. But I think the core story is amazing for The Lion King with the characters. And I think it would translate so much better to live action. And I know people want to shoot me for saying that, but because I don't have that attachment to the 1990s animation, I can go in and say, okay, I really want to see this story with the photoreal production quality of a live action animation essentially. And I goddamn love The Jungle Book. I'm a huge Favreau fan, and part of the reason I've become a bigger Favreau fan in the last few years is because of The Jungle Book. That movie blew me away.
Yeah.
I have an attachment to Rudyard Kipling's source material, so that's, I grew up with that. My dad's from Africa. That's really important to me. And so and then again, lastly, the trailer blew me away. Like, I saw the trailer and it was just goosebumps the entire time. My skin was tingling. I couldn't believe how well just the lighting and the imagery and the feel, there was so much emotion and love put into what little glimpses I saw. And the cast, oh my God, the cast is fantastic. Like, it's like a dream cast. If you were ever to remake a movie, this is the cast to do it with. So I am over the moon. I cannot wait to see it. I hope it's another cultural landmark moment. I hope people who enjoyed the animated movie like it too. It's not just about me. Like, I know I want it to do justice to the people who grew up with this movie and where it matters to them quite significantly. I just can't wait to go to a packed theater and see this movie. It's going to be great. I just know it. It's going to be great.
Yeah, I have to preface what I'm going to say by saying Jon Favreau is a great director. Like, Jon Favreau is a really, really incredible filmmaker. And The Jungle Book specifically, I don't know if I love that movie quite as much as everybody else, but I did really, really like it. And I thought it was not even just a great movie, but a great reinvention of that story, and a great way of bringing that into the 21st century, and doing a good job of like making loose callbacks to the original Disney one, but also kind of doing something different. Like, that to me is like peak Disney remake, now that Disney's kind of like going through and remaking all their classics. And then there's Beauty and the Beast, which I hated. But I also watched Beauty and the Beast, the obviously the one from last year, and was like, yeah, I get it. Like, I get how one can go into that movie and enjoy it and have a good time. Like, it's technically competent. Emma Watson's, fun to watch do things.
Yeah.
Like, the animation on the Beast was really good. I just hate that movie. And I hate that movie because the whole time I was watching it, I was like, oh my gosh, I could just go back and watch the Disney one.
Yeah.
And I would have a better time because it's a better movie, you know? So it's like going into both Lion King and the Guy Ritchie Aladdin movie, which didn't make it onto either of our lists. Like, you know, I'm on one hand, I'm like, hey, some of these Disney remakes have been really interesting, you know, like Jungle Book. Maleficent was really interesting. I loved Pete's Dragon. I feel like everybody forgot about that movie. That movie was great. And then you've had sort of the other ones that have been literal shot for shot remakes, and the few things that they've brought to the table have actually made the source material worse. So it's like I'm skeptical. I'm really skeptical. I'm honestly so skeptical that I don't even know if I'm going to see it. I think I might even wait till
child. What is
I
wrong?
might. Well, here's the thing. I might wait until the reviews come out. I might wait until the hype has died down. I'm just like, I saw that trailer and I was like, man, you know what I want to do right now? I want to go back and watch Lion King. so it's like if a trailer makes me feel. Oh yeah, I grew up with that. I grew up with the Julie Taymor musical, which I also really love.
Have you seen the Broadway version of Lion King?
Yeah. I saw it when it was at the Pantages, but you know, that was, I mean, if you were ever gonna remake Lion King, that was how to do it, because it was in a completely different medium, and the way they sort of brought the animated style on stage but also made something completely different was really cool. But whereas like with this, I watched the trailer, I'm just like, oh, they're CG animals. Like, I don't know. Really? I mean, like it's so weird that they're calling it a live action Lion King too. Like, I'm like, there's nothing live action in that. It's just animated but in a different style. I don't know. Look, it could be good. I'm sure it'll be at least be a good movie. I use air quotes, like a competent, well done, well told story, but I'm just very worried I'm going to walk out of that movie being like, why did you do that? Like, you did not need to do that other than to make another $1 billion. Sure. So, you know, but then again, what movie isn't made to make $1 billion? It's funny, like both, like I look at like both of our number ones are Disney joints, like Star Wars Episode 9 and Lion King. And at the end
Disney
of the day,
does it best. Let's be honest.
They do it best, but at the end of the day, like, you know, they're both monetary decisions.
Sure.
But that's not to say that really great creative things can't come out of monetary decisions. You know, like Jungle Book, like that movie was obviously like everybody at Disney going like, oh, okay, what movie can we remake now? Oh, hey, Jungle Book. And Jon Favreau coming in and doing something really interesting and beautiful and different. So you never know.
So here's the thing. This is interesting to touch on at the end of our list. I don't think everyone sitting in those boardrooms is so cynical when they make these decisions. I mean, they have an obligation to be profitable, to lead the company into a continuously profitable era of creating products. But along the way, there is a desire to create something profound and true and excellent. And I think Disney, you know, even though I disagree with a lot of their methods and how they treat directors, I think they put immense care into advancing the art of storytelling through technology and writing, and through, you know, hiring the absolute best talent. I think a lot of studios ultimately do try to make the best product. I don't have a very cynical view of the studio system for that reason, even though there's a lot of bullshit that goes on and interpersonal dynamics. But like, it is not just about the money. I really don't think. Like, I think Disney really cares about their brand for the most part in terms of the final product they put out, and even some of these remakes are handled with just immense care.
Oh yeah, they've got great quality control. I mean, even a movie like Beauty and the Beast, which, like I said, I hated.
Is that Disney?
Is still like, yeah, it's still a competent. It's still a competent, you know, well made, well put together movie. It's just, why don't I just go watch the old one? I don't know, but yeah, definitely interested to see what Jon Favreau can bring to the table.
Okay, so now that our main list is done, we're going to move on to our honorable mentions section. And what we decided to do for this segment was each bring 3 movies to the table, and in no order, list them rapid fire and just say a quick line or two about what we liked, then let the other person respond. For my list, like, and for both of our lists, like, these aren't necessarily like what we think are going to be the best movies. I think these are just kind of random picks that are all over the place that we're kind of just excited to see how they turn out. Some might be really cheesy, some might be really serious, some might might be sequels in my case that like I know I shouldn't care about that much, but I do. So I'll just go ahead. So one of my honorable mentions is Knives Out by Ryan Johnson. Johnson's a fantastic filmmaker. Couldn't stand The Last Jedi, but I love everything else he's done. He brings a lot of artistic integrity to the table, and I think the idea of a murder mystery in the modern context with his cinematic voice is just a home run of an idea, and I have high confidence in what he's going to be able to deliver. On top of the fact that he's assembled one of like the best casts I've ever seen, so
Great
it's
cast,
going to be
yeah.
ridiculous. Another one on my list is Midway by Roland Emmerich. This very well could be a shit show. This might be another disaster. But Roland Emmerich does handle scope really well, and now that technology's evolved, I'm always excited to bring kind of that shimmer and bright intensity, you know, the color and the light that he brings to these visual effects extravaganzas, like he did with Independence Day Resurgence. I mean, say what you will about the movie, I thought the visual design was fantastic. So if he can capture the real, just the stakes of World War II and the scope of the actual historical battle of Midway without throwing in all this trite, incredibly cheesy character nonsense that occasionally, you know, to say the least, seeps into his movies.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be really good. So Midway, also a good cast, high hopes. And last one for me is Zombieland 2. Which the first one was lightning in a bottle. I mean, it's the same writers who did Deadpool, which is kind of, I think they were exploring the origins of that specific brand of humor in their writing with Zombieland. Absolutely hysterical movie. For the longest time, I've wanted a sequel as well. That's probably part of the reason why it's on this list. I just love that movie so much. I knew it was profitable, and I couldn't figure out why in the age of sequels, it did not have a sequel. And now we're getting one. So
Remember when it got an
crossed.
Amazon pilot? Like they tried to do a
God,
TV show
yeah.
of it. And it was like that Amazon thing where they would like do one episode and then let everybody else vote on it.
Ugh.
And like everybody downvoted it, so we never got the rest of the series. So but the real cast is coming back, right? Like it's
Well,
like
yeah, it's
Jesse
about
Eisenberg and
it's
Woody
about the
Harrelson.
cast. Like I was pissed
Yeah.
at that pilot when I saw it because I'm like, no, screw that. If you're gonna do a sequel, you know, put some thought into it. Put some, you know, give it a proper
back
budget
everyone,
and bring
yeah.
back the cast. It had nothing to do with the concept or even very little to do with the humor. It had to do with the characters and how they interacted and how they went on a journey together. And it had to do with the actors that brought them to life. So I think this is going to be done right, and I'm excited for it.
So for me, topping off my honorable mentions, no idea whether this is going to be good or not, but I have been very interested in Men in Black International since they announced that they were doing another Men in Black movie. Specifically for two reasons. One, because they're planning some sort of crossover with the 21 Jump Street universe, which I'm very, very curious to see what that's all about. But also because I think Tessa Thompson and Chris Hemsworth have amazing chemistry. They were hysterical together in Thor Ragnarok, and judging by the trailer, it looks like they're going to be really funny here. So at the very least, it seems like it might be a lot of fun, even if it's not necessarily a good movie. So I'm definitely interested to see what that is. Captain Marvel, weird that this one actually didn't make my top 5. I actually haven't been too impressed with the trailers. Obviously, it's probably going to be good just because it's Marvel and it's Disney. But I haven't been too jazzed about the way they're marketing it. Still love Brie Larson to death. We're way overdue for a female-led Marvel superhero movie. It'll be cool to see Samuel L. Jackson come back in the Nick Fury role in a different capacity. So that's definitely something I'm looking forward to. And the last one on my honorable mentions list is a bit of a wild card, but it's Little Women, which is Greta Gerwig's follow-up feature to Lady Bird. Lady Bird, spoiler alert, Adam and I both love the hell out of Lady Bird. That was a really great movie, easily one of the best of that year. And really solidified Greta Gerwig as an essential cinematic voice. So seeing her get to adapt a piece of classic literature with such an incredible cast, like how can that not be good? I mean, knock on wood, but you know, she seems like a filmmaker who really, really knows what she's doing. She's an actress, so she knows how to work with actresses really well. So that's something that might be really, really incredible. So I'm very excited for that too. So thanks so much for tuning into this discussion. Please leave a comment. What are your most anticipated movies? What movies are you guys looking forward to in the coming year? Once again, my name is Jackson Smith.
And I'm Adam.
And thank you for joining us.